Hello, everyone. Welcome to Truth Medicine. My name's Carrie. I'll be your host. And Truth Medicine is a community where we explore the stories, the lessons, and life changing moments that have brought women to heal by living their medicine of truth. And today I'm really excited to introduce Turbo Rainbow. She is a mother and a mentor and a freedom coach. She's also the creatrix behind Let Love Reveal Itself, and she also has a signature program called Sovereign. So, everyone, let's welcome Turbo Rainbow.
Hi.
Hi, hello. So, I have to ask Turbo Rainbow, how did you get that name?
Mm. So Turbo Rainbow was really quite an anomaly in my life. I have to frame it first by saying that I had a really hard and chunky childhood. And the way that I perceived that and the way that it rolled along was that I ended up being really vindictive and mean and closed and tight and angry. And there was this moment in my life, I remember the exact moment when I looked around at all of my friends and I didn't like them. And I was like, how did I get here? Who are these people? Why am I here? And then I just had this aha moment that they were there because they were the only people who could tolerate me.
Mm.
And so at that exact moment, I decided to put myself on trial. I was about 21, and that's what I called it. I said, I'm putting myself on trial. And I judged my attitude and my behavior and the way that I saw the world. And I really decided to redesign the way that I behaved, the way that I thought, the way that I related to my reality. And at that exact same time, I kind of fell into a conscious community. And at the time, I was very young, so I was hyperactive and really involved and super engaged. And it was my mission at the time. It felt like my mission to hug everyone and have some kind of deep connection. And the moment that we had a deep connection, I would be like, thank you so much. I need to meet someone else. And I would just run around this conscious community and constantly be meeting new people and engaging in deep conversations. And so someone called me a turbo rainbow fairy, and it just caught on. And at the time, it kind of was just this fun, uplifting name, but in conjunction with my desire to change my life and overhaul everything that I had ever been, I decided to pour into this name, Turbo Rainbow, love, compassion, unconditional acceptance, um, creativity, curiosity, inquiry, patience, kindness, all of these things that I had never had before or really never cultivated. I poured them into her and then I became her.
Mm.
And then over the years, it started to feel kind of funny and weird. And I wasn't really sure if I could keep Turbo Rainbow past 30. So around 28 or 29, I had this internal battle with that name and if people would take me seriously and if I could move through this world with that name. But I decided to kind of just keep with the course and get through that. And now I'm 35 and I feel really comfortable in Turbo Rainbow and I love what she stands for. And she's most certainly evolved. Um, but that's who I am and that's how I go.
That's so fascinating. A moment to really just have that self-awareness to be like, "Oh, I don't like everybody around me and they're just all accepting tolerating me," right? That's such a I would say shitty place to be, but also a
Mhm.
very pivotal and powerful moment. And would you say that was one of the moments that kind of catapulted you into doing the things that you're doing today in the world?
Mm. Absolutely. So at that age, it could be a sad age, but when you come from a period of your life when everything feels sad, it just was like an aha moment. I didn't feel resentful or angry. What I did was feel finally hope. I felt joy, excitement about something new. And so that really was the door to a new possibility. And that's when I decided that I wanted to really cultivate real relationships and real awareness and real consciousness. And of course, when I started, I was fumbling all over the place and trying on a bunch of different things.
Mhm.
Um, but what I got the most out of stepping through that portal was acceptance that people do want your best qualities, that you are supported in this universe. And when you
Mm.
choose to really believe in yourself, other people support that belief. And I really think that that's when I was truly born as a person.
That's such a powerful, like, moment. Yeah. Could you share with us what it is that you do? Something just really simple,
Mm,
what you do in the
well,
world?
currently, what I do is just activate awareness and self love, power, empowerment, within others. I specifically work with women because I feel comfortable with women as a woman, but I do work with all types of people, all ages, all genders. My niche just happens to be with women. I had a very tumultuous experience, and I realized recently I had a tumultuous experience, and I realized that there are a lot of women who are going through tumultuous
Mm,
experiences based on their limiting beliefs that they brought with them from childhood. And I got very curious recently about how I'd gotten to that point, how I ended up in a relationship like that. And instead of playing the victim card and feeling sorry for myself and hoping that some other person would save me, I decided to reach all the way in, just like when I did when I was 21, and save myself and get curious and inquire about all of my belief systems and all of
mm,
my ways of being. And once I did that, I realized that I want to do this for other women. I want other women to really wake up to their freedom and their sovereignty and their joy and their bliss and their desires.
mm.
So that's a little bit about what I do.
Yeah, and I think it's so needed in the world. I mean, not even just with women, everybody, but like specifically, like I know women are rising. We hear that all the time. Women are rising, which is beautiful. And I think we can never have enough of like empowering other women, especially if you're a woman. Um, what was the you said tumultuous incident? What happened?
So Turbo Rainbow, when she was young, she was filled with life and hope and acceptance and all of this bright, beautiful possibility. And I think what she didn't realize when she was young is how to have boundaries. And nobody taught me boundaries. So when Turbo Rainbow fell in love, she didn't have any boundaries. And, you know, I'm just speaking as from her as a third person, just because I feel so different from that person who didn't have any boundaries. But the truth is, I just didn't have any boundaries, and I didn't understand how to have any standards or expectations. And I don't mean like expectations around how something should be. I mean expectations around how I should be treated, expectations around how someone should show up for me and how I should show up for someone else. And so I found myself in a relationship that was toxic, abusive, negative, and
With another
um,
woman or like
with
in
another man.
oh,
With
with a man. With a
with
man.
a man, we
Okay.
fell in love, and we had a baby. And I remember when we first got pregnant, I was so madly in love with him that I had no desire to really look head on at what was going on, at what he was doing, saying, being, how he was treating me. I was so in love with him that I didn't look. And I was also so convinced that I couldn't be a mother without him. And
Mm,
I really want to press to that my belief around being in love with him, I can see now was also a belief in an idea. I think that I was not directly looking at our relationship. I was looking at my idea of what he was to me, and so it was a lot easier for me to not really see what was going on and how I was being treated. and how I was playing small, like I kept shrinking myself until essentially I disappeared.
Mm,
And what was left was a lot of coping mechanisms and addictions and sadness and despair and desperation.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, a lot of us go there's like this movement of, oh, you have to be whole to have like an amazing relationship. And while I can see that aspect to like knowing yourself before you go into a relationship or just knowing your boundaries, right? I don't think that we're taught boundaries. I think Mark Groves mentioned something about like we're we're used to be like living in tribe, like it's just in our DNA that we don't have boundaries because it's like if we create our own boundaries, we kind of throw out our tribe. So we're just not that's not something we have, but now we're like learning boundaries.
Hmm.
But yeah, when we show up to relationships and we don't know our boundaries, we don't know who we are, like we suffer a lot. And especially if we've had like challenging childhoods that
Hmm.
haven't been healed or like uh, um looked at, like that's when I think these relationships get really challenging. So I'm curious how you like what moment were you like, okay, like maybe I need to love myself or maybe I need to get out of this. What was the moment like for you when you
Well,
realized like that this ain't working?
before I tell you that moment, I do want to say that I really relate to you talking about the childhood and how whatever a lot of different things happened in my childhood, and I mentioned that I was an angry person. It was that childhood that kind of created a space for me to stay in a relationship that wasn't working. Like when you're a kid and bad things are happening to you, you have no context for another possibility. So I believed that I deserved to be treated this way. And then the way I was
Mm,
perceiving my reality as a kid was that I was overlooked, that I was unseen, unheard, disrespected. And those were secret beliefs that I stored in my mind and my body. I'm not worthy of respect. I'm not worthy of being seen and validated. So then when Turbo Rainbow became a thing and she transformed her life, she never considered looking at how she became that way. She only wanted to change her behavior. So then, once I was inside of this relationship and I was believing that I didn't deserve respect or validation, I didn't deserve to be seen, heard, or witnessed, those childhood beliefs, which really started to take hold and started to shrink me, I actually started behaving like a child. I
mm,
started reacting and responding from a place of this wounded child, like straight default mode, temper tantrums,
mm,
screaming, crying, all of this stuff. And regardless of how valid those experiences were, they were also wildly unhealthy. There were several moments when I knew that this wasn't okay, but the absolute moment when I knew that things needed to change is when I had transplanted my entire family across America, and I thought, this is going to be it. I'm starting over. He has no way to relate to his old stuff. Like there's no, so he's also an addict, and I'm just going to preface that.
So
Um,
when you transported your family, you mean your son and your husband?
yes,
Okay.
that was its own tumultuous
Mhm,
experience, but essentially, I transplanted my family from one location to another.
mm,
And I believed fundamentally that because we were starting over, that and he didn't have access to his coping mechanisms or the same people that and he was making lots of promises. I really believed deep in my heart that we were going to change, that things were going to be okay,
mm.
and things were going to be better. And within 6 months of living in a new state, in a new place, I could see that he was not only exactly the same, but possibly worse. But what was different was me. Like, I transplanted me too. And I kept putting my family on a pedestal and not really acknowledging that I was having my own personal experience. And what I was experiencing in this moment as I'm starting over and making new friends and re engaging with a part of myself, like you get to rebrand yourself when you move across the
Mhm.
world. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of new people and they have no expectations of who you are. So I decided, wow, I get to reorganize who I am again and decide where my boundaries are. And I was like, oh, I have no boundaries. Oh, that's really interesting. I let people walk all over me. Oh, that's really interesting. I'm letting my husband walk all over me. I have no boundaries with my husband. Oh, he's behaving the exact same way he's always behaved, but I'm different. So really, that was
Mhm.
really the moment when I just woke up and I was like, I need to change my life or I'm going to die. And I did have probably a 6 to 8 month period where, for the very first time in my life, I was wondering why I was here. What's
Mm.
the point of all this? And I had a very hard childhood and I never thought those things. And I'm waking up in another state and I'm like, if the point of my life is to make other people happy, but I'm not happy, I don't think I wanna be here anymore.
It mm, I feel that so much. I feel that so much. Honestly, I just wanna honor you for all the courage you have gathered to get to where you are. And,
Mm,
it may not be easy every day. Like, we are human. No one's, like, happy all the time. No one's got it all figured out. Like, we're all like, even if we've come a long ways, we'll still go through things, but now, like,
mhm.
having the tool set and the awareness that you do, I'm sure it makes it a little easier. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe some days you go into the hole. I know I do. And to speak on the childhood thing, for so long, like, I've always wanted to help people. I always wanted to, like, just be, like, a light in the world, right? And people would say, "What's your story? Like, why do you wanna do this?" And I'm like, "Well, I just see a lot of suffering in the world." I was so, like, blindsided to my childhood, and it wasn't till recently that I actually started digging into how I actually felt. I was so detached from, like, what had happened in my childhood, and I had a very, I'm still getting comfortable sharing my story because I had a very violent childhood. Not that I was beat, but I witnessed, like, my brother getting beat, my mother, and, to you don't know what goes on in a little child's psyche when they witness that, so I was so disassociated from it because I'm like, "Oh, I didn't get beat, so I had a good childhood, like, it wasn't bad." But, like, going into that, it's been, like, the most challenging thing, and
It takes
it
courage.
it does, it totally does, and it's still, like, such a process, and I think everything we're living in our adult life stems from how we felt from a and there's
Mhm.
scientific research around, like, what happened from in the uterus until 7 years old. Your mind's just like a sponge, so you're just absorbing everything that's going on. You're learning the programs that need to be created so you can live your life. So, is there a certain time in your childhood that you saw reliving in your relationship?
Mm, absolutely. I would say when the abuse really started to show up, I shrank into that first period of life. I would say, between 7 and 14, I was just a rebel without a cause, and I gave my parents a very difficult time. But what I remember specifically is from 7 years old before, I didn't have any control over what was happening to me. I didn't get to make any decisions. And
Mhm.
my experiences as that child, really, if I'm completely honest, were incredibly disconnected and dysfunctional. My mom, who I love dearly and I have forgiven her for this, was not loving to me. And she would, on many occasions, call me a monster. and call my sister an angel, and then she would compare us to me. And I'm 2, 3, 4 years old. I have no concept of what she's talking about other than her calling me a monster and me seeing what that means on TV, and her calling my sister an angel and me seeing that on TV, and then her loving my sister more than me. At least that was my perception. And
Mm,
so there was this experience of loss. Like as a baby, I felt lost. I felt empty. I felt this void. I felt like I didn't belong. And so then flash forward to this time when I'm being abused by this grown man. I I felt like that little girl, like I didn't have any control. I didn't have a voice. I wasn't in my rebel stage where I could just yell and scream and make a fit. It was like all of a sudden I'd shrunk down to this little girl who had absolutely no power. And I didn't know that I was worthy of speaking my truth. I didn't know that I was worthy of creating boundaries, and no one taught me how to make boundaries. So I certainly didn't have any kind of education or understanding of how to do that. So if I ever was speaking a boundary, it would come out like kind of clunky. And you can't respect somebody drawing a boundary when it's clunky because you don't believe it's a real boundary, right? And I'm not speaking from like my experience towards someone else. I just can relate to my husband not respecting my boundaries because I didn't know how to speak them. I didn't know what I was asking for. I didn't know what I was saying. And he was also lost at sea. So he wasn't even aware of the abuse that he was offering. He was just behaving. And without a direct, powerful, concise boundary, there's no way for him to know where I really end and where he begins. And a lot of our relationship was just us blending. It was a very codependent experience. When you talk about Mark Groves, I think I was listening to him 2 years ago and thanking God that he was telling me that I didn't need to be with my husband till death do us part. And he would constantly talk about how there can be till death do us part can just be the death of that
mhm,
you.
that old
And
you.
I and that gave me so much courage, so much power to at least begin the process of thinking about living on my own.
Mm. So what was the for those listening, I'm sure they're probably relating to your story, and there's probably people that are in similar situations where they feel they can't do it on their own, but they so want to. What advice would you have for somebody that's, maybe scared, wanting to get out of this kind of relationship?
Mm. Well, it's hard to make a recommendation or a suggestion because in situations like this, I have a kid and a lot of my life revolves around making sure that he has food and shelter and clothes. So I just want to first frame this from saying like make sure that you have some kind of plan so that you can take care of what needs to be taken care of. And from the moment that you know that this is no longer working, you don't have the courage to leave. You just have to have the courage to write down what it is you want.
Mm.
Have the courage to write down what it is that you deserve. Have the courage to write down what it is that you have a vision for. And that plan could take anywhere between 2 weeks to 2 years.
Or
But I
longer.
will, what?
Or longer. Yeah.
Yes. But it's really important to at least allow yourself the possibility and the worthiness of having something else. I remember when I first was like, this isn't working for me. I want something else. And there was a mantra that I took into my life, which was, I want something else. And that was it. And at the beginning, it meant nothing. But after a while, it turned into, I can have something else. I'm worthy of something else.
Mm.
What is that something else that I want? What does that something else look like? And that took its own form, its own shape. It became its own um,
Entity.
energy.
Mhm.
Did you say entity?
Mm.
Yeah, it became its own organism. And then there was the moment. And the moment looked a lot like me saying, you know what? I don't fucking care anymore. I don't care if I drown. I don't care if I don't have enough money. I don't care if I don't have a place to live. I can't fucking do this anymore. My son can't fucking do this anymore. I just can't fucking do this anymore. I'm done. And the moment that I told myself that I was done, regardless of my circumstances, regardless of the support that I thought I did or didn't have, and I let go, other shit showed up. And I think that when we're inside of abuse, we just can't conceive of another possibility. We can't fucking conceive of it.
Mhm.
But the moment that I told myself that I was worthy of drowning financially, I'm ready to just give up and have to move back in with my parents or whatever scary ass shit I thought I had to do. That's not what happened. What
Mhm.
happened was that we broke up. And that story in itself was ugly and it took a long time, but the universe doesn't just let you drown, other things came in and were reorganized, and there were possibilities that revealed themselves to me that I could not see inside of the abuse because I had just surrendered to being abused. I'm in an abusive situation. This is all that there is for me.
Mhm.
So go ahead.
That is so beautiful that you got out of it. You took the courage and you got out of it. And I wanted to ask you this a little further back. So when you realized all this stuff, maybe it was from childhood where you said you felt powerless or you didn't have a voice. What do you think healed that? Like what was something you did that healed that to kind of shift you out of this relationship?
Hmm. Well, it started small. It was just little small moments, like one, comparing myself to other women who were my age, who weren't in abusive relationships, who were walking around just giving no fucks and doing whatever they wanted. And I was like, what do they have that I don't have? And it looked like they had courage. And so I was like, how can I have just a tiny bit of courage today? What is that going to look like? And it might just say, no, I'm not going to wash the dishes right now. You can do it. Or I'd watch them hang out with their friends without fear of just without fear. And I'd be like, how can I live fearlessly today? How can I spend time with my friends today? And so instead of asking for permission to go hang out with my friends, I would say, I'm going to go hang out with my friends right now. Um, and it was just tiny steps in the
Mm,
beginning, but those tiny steps gave me power, motivation. I realized that these scary things that I've never given myself permission to do are actually just scary because I've never done them before. And I'm allowed to have courage. And when
mm,
I have courage and I practice it, right? We have these spiritual practices and we have physical practices, and practice is doing something over and over again. So small, tiny, courageous moments, tiny moments where I would go out with my friends without asking for permission and
mm,
knowing that I'm an adult. I'm 35 or 33 at the time,
mm,
whatever it is, and they're living freely. I want to live freely. What does that look like? And so just giving myself permission to access that in just a sliver here and a sliver there and a sliver there. And all of a sudden it turns into a whole pie. And I realize that I'm whole without this other person
mm.
and that I can create my life based on my beliefs and my values. But it did start small. You have to start where you're at. And if you believe that you'll never have your freedom because that woman is really free over there, then you're going to stay in the prison in this prison. And so I just really gave myself access to a sliver of freedom at a time.
Mm.
Um, and also living in a world where social media is prevalent and you can Google stuff, like I feel like if I was in an abusive relationship in the 70s and 80s, I probably wouldn't have had as much access to healing. But I was constantly comparing myself, and we live in a world where people are telling you not to compare yourselves. But I'll tell you, comparing myself to a free woman saved my fucking life. And I saw free women everywhere. And I was like, I want that. And of course, my brand of freedom looks different from someone else's, but it doesn't change that I get to have my freedom. And it was through comparing myself on social media to free women that made me have the motivation to even try to get there.
That's so cool that you, like, use you say, "I compare myself to women that already had freedom." Usually we're all like, "Don't compare yourself to people," but
Yes.
you put such a positive spin on comparing yourself. And
Mhm.
I took a course in NLP, and one of the big things in NLP is people that are wanting to, like, become, achieve their goals faster is, like, role model somebody. So you
Mm,
step into that person that you wanna be. Like, say you wanna be a successful writer, okay? Who do you know has already done it? Okay, so you imagine that you're them. What do they see? What do they feel? What do they hear? What do they do? And you just embody it. So I feel like on some level you did that, and that is such a
mhm,
powerful tool for anybody listening that may feel stuck in their current situation. What do you
mhm,
wanna do? Who do you wanna be like? In the most positive way. Begin to mimic them, step to their reality. And,
mhm.
it's the imagination, right? Like, what are we without our imagination? So
I wanna
it's
touch on something you just said, though. What do I want? What Who do I wanna be? And those are 2 things that I was never asking myself. And when I started looking at all of these free women and they were doing whatever they wanted, it really reminded me to ask myself what I wanted, and I'd never, ever, ever really done that before.
Mm,
And I found that I what I wanted didn't fit into the world that I created with this man. I There was no space for me to eat the food I wanted or listen to the
mm,
music I wanted or say the things I wanted, believe the things I wanted. And through accessing just a list, really. In the beginning, I was just making a list. This is what I want. This is what I want to listen to. And creating small pockets of me doing what I wanted. The more I accessed what I wanted, the more the abuse became intolerable. Because
oh,
now all of a sudden, I was giving myself tiny slivers of what I wanted. And I think there are so many women, especially in this culture where we're taught to serve. Women are just taught to serve and to not really to put themselves on the back burner. Like there's time later for what you want, but first you need to deal with others. And it's like there never is more time later for what you want. There is only this right now moment for what you want. And you will always put yourself on the back burner if you're not living in your truth, which is what do you want? What do you want to be? And I just love that you said that. And I wanted to
mm.
proliferate that a little bit.
Thank you, Miss Turbo Rainbow. I love how authentic you are and how real you are, and you have so much, like, fire and passion. And yeah, I just really want to acknowledge that part of yourself that I love how
Thank
you
you.
show up, like, in all
Thank
your
you.
ways. And yeah, I'm curious to know, like, so you finally got out of the relationship. How did you maintain, like, being this new version of Turbo Rainbow?
Hmm. Well, I got lucky. I'm not going to deny that there was this moment when COVID was happening. And usually when you are going through a breakup, your life stays the same except for the absence of this other person. But
Mm.
I was dying. to have my own space because our relationship had become so toxic that firstly, I just felt free. The feeling of the absence of him wasn't sadness, it was just relief. But in conjunction with our breakup, COVID happened and there was nothing but space. So instead of still going to work and doing the grind and going to school and doing all of the bullshit that we're always doing on the wheel, it was like I got to sleep in, I got to feel my feelings, I got to really heal, and I got lucky. Like, not everybody has that experience when they break up. And if I could offer any insight to anyone, it is that I did not get out of this breakup without feeling sadness and grief
Mm,
and anger. And I just felt those feelings in a space where there was nothing else for me to do but feel. March was all about just feeling free, and it was just this catharsis of freedom. And then April came, and I was sad, and I drank wine every day and tried to numb out, and just I let myself just feel sad. And
mhm,
then May and June was a little bit more uplifted, but a lot of anger. Like, I can't believe this happened to me. I can't believe you did this to me. And I can't believe I let this happen. And I really want to get that if you're not willing to take responsibility for what you let happen, your trauma will just stay in your body.
mhm,
Long as you're blaming someone else, and he did it to me, but I also stayed. I let it happen. And so taking full responsibility for my part created space for my trauma to fully move out of my body.
mhm,
And by August, I was just feeling really good and also in compassion. So because I gave myself permission to feel my feelings, I now can offer him grace and compassion and friendship. And I'm not saying that that's for everyone, but it absolutely is for me. And as long as I'm in blame and shame and guilt, we're both trapped.
mm,
And he can't grow or evolve if I'm holding him in that place.
mhm. And you just perpetuate the cycle and the wounding, and it's like
Yes.
if you don't actually, allow yourself to feel everything that happened and feel what you're truly feeling, it's like then you show up to another relationship and you have similar experiences, and it just
Yes.
keeps going and going and going.
Mhm.
And this is why I love talking about stuff because, we're all going through similar stuff. And it's important to acknowledge the realness and the rawness and the truth of the reality. Like, I feel like I look at a lot of people on social media and I'm like, wow, they just seem like it's all good. And, like they have all this money and it just seems effortlessly when I know that's not all real. And I think that's my true intention with creating this is because like a lot of us are starting from nothing, ground zero, and we've had hard childhoods, and I want to empower the voices and expand the awareness of people that are going through similar stuff. Um I'm just
Piggyback off that?
huh?
Can I just piggyback off that for a second?
Totally.
I just love that you said that because I think that in this society, we drag our childhood into our adulthood, and we are not trained or taught to do any self inquiry. So when we start to take responsibility for our lives, it looks a lot like shame. Oh, I can't believe I let this happen. Oh, I'm such a bad person. Oh, woo woo. And it's like, actually, no. You just took your childhood into your adulthood, and now you get to dismantle your identity. You get to look at it. Is this working? Is this not working? And then through the truth, this truth, which is medicine, the honest, absolute, raw, unbelievably unabashed truth, we can get to the crux of our problems, of our trauma, of our issues, and then we can redesign who we want to be. Like, I don't have to be that little girl ever again because I decided to look at her finally. I
Mm.
decided to ask her what she wanted. Why are you throwing a temper tantrum right now? Oh, it's because I haven't meditated for 5 minutes this morning, or I didn't take a bath yesterday. And like all of these tiny little pieces of self care, of self-love. This is how you recreate your identity. This is how you reorganize how you want to show up in the world. So I just wanted to piggyback off what you said, because we're all capable of becoming whoever the fuck we want to be, but we can't become those people until we look at who we're actually being.
Yeah, girl, I love the way you speak. um, can you hear me?
Thank you. I can.
Okay. So I noticed I was watching your Instagram story one day and you were talking about how you got triggered. And when you're triggered, you need to take a nap or um, love yourself. And I really love you said something in there too. I can't recall, but I'm going to let you explain it. I really love that you acknowledge that. Can you share with us the importance of really acknowledging and paying attention to your triggers because they are guideposts?
Hmm. So I want to start by saying that our triggers generally are wounds from our inner children. And the term inner child is kind of under this umbrella of woo. I don't want to acknowledge this because it's super woo and that's nothing and this is who I am now. But the truth is that your inner child is absolutely your default mode of reacting, not responding. So if I'm triggered, my inner child is not getting their needs met. So I'll go into why I posted that. Specifically, I was teaching my son, and he's really just not interested in doing school at all. And he did not want to write the word cat. And he was fumbling with his pencil and putting it in his mouth and making jokes and throwing it on the floor. And I was getting so angry. I was getting triggered. And I knew in that moment that me getting that angry about him writing the word cat was just completely inappropriate. I was
Mm,
like, I need to take 5. I'm just going to go away. And so I took 5 and I started to do deep breathing. And firstly, oh my gosh, here's a reminder that I haven't been practicing self care. Here I am taking deep breaths, practicing self care, letting myself feel cared for. As the adult that I am, I can care for the little girl in me who
mm,
wants to throw a temper tantrum. And so I'm taking these deep breaths and I'm like, oh crap, I haven't been doing any of my self care practices. I need to take a nap. What else does she need? Oh, she wants to eat something sweet. Well, the little girl who wants to eat something sweet would love to have 5, 6, 7 pieces of cake or some cookies or whatever. But the parent, me, I get to parent my inner child, is like, oh, you want something sweet? Here, have an apple with some peanut butter on top and some whatever sprinkled on top. But if I really acknowledge her and really own, like you said, the triggers that are my guideposts, I move back into taking care of myself.
mm,
And so I don't think anyone taught us how to take care of ourselves. And I don't want to say everyone, I'll just
mhm,
say me then. Nobody taught me how to take care of myself. I was taught to obey. I was taught to get good grades. I was
mm,
taught to fit in. I wasn't taught to listen to my body. I wasn't taught to take deep breaths. I wasn't taught to write down what I'm thinking so I can see what it is I'm thinking. I wasn't taught how to be a human. It's kind of like that's just kind of pushed off the table. Being a human is this thing that you'll just figure out. And I'm like, now that I'm a parent of a child, I can see that you can also talk about those things. You can really take care of them and acknowledge them. And the more that I take care of my child, this person, like my body's fully grown, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some little girl who wants to throw a fit because she needs a bath and a nap. And I'm not giving her a bath or a nap because I've decided that something else is far more important. It's like, actually, there's nothing more important than taking care of yourself. There's nothing more important. And you cannot take care of anyone else unless you are taking care of yourself. So if you decide that you're triggered, but you've got something more important to do, you can count on that trigger following you throughout your day, interrupting you when you're trying to have a beautiful conversation with your friend, or you're talking to your waiter and he tells you that the soup that you wanted to eat just isn't there that day, and all of a sudden that trigger that you should have dealt with 6 hours ago is now showing up with you and this waiter, and you think you're mad about clam chowder, but you're just mad because you're not taking care of yourself.
Because that little girl is just wanting to be heard and seen, and you
Yes,
keep, like, shoving her down.
yes,
I really
felt invalidated.
Mhm. That those are huge. I really love this subject of inner child, and I really love that you ask her what she wants. She wants something sweet, and you give her something to eat. Because I
Mhm,
always do it. I'm like, "Okay, what do you need right now?" And usually my little girl just says like, "I just need a hug," but I don't
mhm,
actually physically do something. So I think it's cool to like just open it up to all sorts of thing and actually do a physical
mhm.
activity. Like,
Well, it's so validating. Like, even my little girl wants a hug sometimes, but when she wants a hug, she wants to curl up on the bed and she wants to lay and she wants to be held. And that takes 3 minutes. That takes 3 minutes tops. And I'm over here, I don't have time for that. It's like I do have time for that. And if I don't make time for those little tiny things that I need, I am going to blow up at the waiter about the clam chowder, or I'm going to blow up at my kid about not writing the word cat. Our triggers, like you said, are guideposts towards taking care of ourselves.
mm,
And if we're not taking care of ourselves, again, these triggers are going to follow us. And some people I have witnessed not taking care of their triggers. And so then there's several triggers compiling up,
mm.
snowballing, and all of a sudden you feel completely taken advantage of, completely walked all over. You're constantly in victim mode. And it's like, have you considered that it's not someone else's job to take care of you? It is your job to take care of you.
Mhm,
And it's really lovely to be in a nice partnership where somebody can pick up the bill sometimes
mm,
emotionally and mentally, but you are fundamentally capable of giving yourself everything that you need. And from that place, you are whole and you can love someone else. And so I'm not saying that we aren't victims. I have been victim of rape and all sorts of
mhm,
crazy, ugly stuff. But I can also take responsibility for what I need after those things happen. Like, I don't have to say, oh my God, this happened to me. I'm so sad and sorry, and I don't know what to do. It's like, well, close your eyes and ask yourself what you need. And if
mm.
something really bad happened, you probably need to cry and scream and bang into a pillow and maybe set something on fire and whatever it is, like we have the ugliest needs and the most delicious ones, and all of them are valid.
Wow, you've given us a lot of goodies. Y I mean,
Thank
no,
you.
honestly, there's a bunch of goodies in this conversation that people could take right now and do and, integrate into their life to heal and to move forward. Um, so out of all the things that you've overcome, what has been the most challenging with, like, staying in your truth and healing?
Mm.
What's been the most challenging for you?
Mm. Honestly, scarcity.
Mm,
I think that we all come back to scarcity. Um, we live in a world where we need money, and if you're not tapping into the flow of actual abundance, you can get lost in the trap of not enoughness. I don't have enough, there will never be enough. And so for me, as a single mother who is living on her own, that challenge comes up often, even today.
mm,
I had a hard day
mm,
around scarcity. And the truth is that the way that I work with scarcity is that I name it and I say, oh, I'm feeling scarcity. And so that immediately gives my scarcity permission to exist and it takes away its power over my identity. I am not scarcity.
Mm.
Scarcity doesn't belong to me, it's just moving through me.
Mm.
So, my practice around scarcity is to name it and let it have its way. Usually, it takes between 15 minutes and 2 hours, depending on how severe this like movement is happening. And sometimes there's crying. But at the end of it, through the process of just letting it have its way, then I can breathe into abundance. I can breathe in like, I actually am abundance. I have an abundance of cells. I have an abundance of anything. Like my mind can look for proof of abundance. And
Mhm.
we constantly think that abundance equals money. Abundance equals this, abundance
Mhm.
equals that. And it's like actually abundance just is an experience of the overflow. And
Mhm.
I personally want to experience the overflow so that I can get back into a position of knowing that I'm okay. Like my money gets small and it gets big and it gets small and it gets big, just like my breath, just
Mm.
like the seasons. Like you don't get through this life just expanding, and you also don't come out of this life just contracting. Like
Mm.
you have to observe that scarcity moves just like the seasons and just like your breath and just like your
Mm.
heartbeat, and that you can get through this experience without making it who you are, making it a mood. Like if
Mm.
I don't deal with my scarcity, I'm going to be in a bad mood for a week or a month or however long it is. My mom lives in scarcity constantly. So, it's something that you can manage and deal with. And that's just the challenge that I constantly deal with as a new single mom. And I know that I'll
Mm.
as I reorganize and kind of get with this, I know that that will also,
Mm.
you know, I don't want to say go away, but I'm learning to deal with it better.
Yeah, and almost everybody in the world has this unless you're just born into, like, money, like, we've been so programmed to fear and live in that, so I really honor you for being so real and honest with your process because this is true. That's true. Like
Mhm,
we go back and forth. And I love how you had the metaphor of the seasons,
mhm,
like it's so true. Like we're not always just like abundance and you can live your life in abundance all the time. I mean, I think that is possible, but the reality is we're not a lot of us aren't there, and I wanna relate with the mass of people, and I
mhm,
think what you said was so powerful, and, we can feel that way, and we can acknowledge it and go in and, try to see where this comes from, and I'm a big, like, believer in inherited family trauma, ancestral stuff, so it's like, we can do our best and be aware of it, but if it's, like, held in our family lineage, we're going to be processing that out and it's just beautiful to be aware of and
mhm.
turbo rainbow, you've been such a delight. I just want to squeeze you. um
Squeeze,
I know.
squeeze.
There we go. So for the people that are just beginning their journey of self-awareness and have never really even spoken their truth, is there any token of truth that you could give to somebody just beginning their journey?
Of self-awareness?
Just like
Um,
a token of truth that people that are just beginning, something that could like put them in the direction of living
mm,
their truth.
yes. Okay, so absolutely the most important thing ever, 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 ever in the world is to love yourself. And I come up against this with women who are like, I just can't get there. And it's like, yes, you can start where you're at. So if you believe and have believed your whole life that you're worthless and blah, 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 what is one small thing in your reality that you can do for yourself right now? And it could be, I'm deciding to make myself a cup of tea every day, and it takes a lot of effort to create new habits. So a cup of tea might be a huge deal for someone. But if it's something that you're doing for you and you're starting right where you're at, and maybe it's not a cup of tea, maybe it's I'm absolutely going to floss my teeth or I'm going to make sure that my kids don't come in to the bathroom when between this moment and this. It's like whatever works for you, but I want you to get with your self love because it starts to snowball. I'm not asking you to love your whole you. I'm not asking you to overhaul your whole life. I'm asking you to get with loving you just a little bit, just a little bit. And it starts to snowball. When you love yourself just a little bit every day, all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, that feels really good. I think that I will love myself just a little bit over here because that feels good." And all of a sudden you realize that this isn't just about worthiness, this is about necessity. How long have I not been loving myself? How long? Just a little bit. And that little bit, it grows all by itself. You barely have to do any work, and you can start with just making a cup of tea. It's very basic.
Mm, beautiful. All right. If this has lit a fire in someone's heart and they want to find you, where can they find you?
Mm. So I am on Instagram at turbos underscore rainbow. Do you want me to spell that or
Yeah, you can fill it.
okay, it's turbo with an S underscore rainbow, just plain and simple. And then you can also find me at letlove-revealitself.com. I have one-on-one programs called, I have one one-on-one program called Empress Embodied, and that's for women who are already doing the work but really want to get a straight shot to loving themselves all the way through and walking through this life like they are a goddess, like they are the fucking bee's knees. And that is a 3-month program. And then I also have another program. This is a group coaching package. It's a course and it lasts 8 weeks. And I have one starting October 21st, but I will also be doing quite a few of them in 2021. I really just love working with women. And then I'm also on Facebook, but it's spelled out just a little bit differently. It's turbos underscore rainbow, but instead of an S, it's a Z because that's what they had to spare.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
awesome. And if anybody watching this inspired anybody or you think this could light somebody else's heart up, please share it. You never know who needs to hear something that one of us said or could really change their life. So please support the show and share as much as you'd like. And until we see each other again, y'all have a beautiful week.